Leeds United are going a little bit bonkers. Whilst the on-pitch stuff is going incredibly well, off the pitch, in the back rooms, in the boardroom, all sorts of stuff is going off because we have many, many, many backroom updates to pass along, and I am going to do my best to explain them all to you, or at least the three big stories that have sort of happened and been expanded upon today. All I ask for in exchange is press that subscribe button down about here. Be massively appreciated. Thank you. Genuinely really appreciate it. Anyway, the first of the stories is around Angus Kinnear going to Everton. That has now been confirmed as a move that is happening, with the Leeds United CEO set to join Everton at the end of this season. And fair enough, because he's had a decently long stint at Leeds United, and I think it might be time for the 49ers to maybe think, let's bring our own guy in. In addition to that, he moves as a part of the new stadium transition for Everton. It's something that he's done before, twice with Arsenal and with West Ham, and it would have been quite good to have him do it with us when we do our stadium redevelopment, but that's not to be the case, but that's okay, in my opinion. He fills the role at Everton after 5 years here. That role at Everton has been empty for 2 years. They had an interim for a bit, but they're looking to get something a little bit more permanent done. And what was noted in the article that I read on this, and it was from an Everton perspective, was that his role in Leeds United's long-term vision was especially noted. So when he came in, we were a championship club that hadn't been up in the first place. Then under him, we signed Marcelo Bielsa, got promoted. Things went wrong because wrong managerial appointments, but rebuilt and got back to it. And that sort of long-term vision and ability to turn around things that have gone a little bit wrong is something that is pretty significant when it comes to picking the right CEO, and Everton have seen that in him. And it leaves Leeds United with a pretty big gap to fill. The concerns for me include the fact that he did have that speciality in stadium moves. So when we are doing the stadium redevelopment, it would have been really, really good to have him on board because he knows how to do that kind of stuff, knows what to look for. But in all fairness, he's been with us like throughout it to this point. And on that note, Parag has had stuff to say on the stadium changes, Elland Road's redevelopment. What's going to be going on with that? Well, he had a little bit of a conversation at the Financial Times Business of Football Summit, which I think is quite interesting. I want to try and learn a little bit more about that. I'm going to have a deep dive and see what I can bring out and maybe do a stream on it tomorrow or something. But he had many a quote come out of this that I'm just going to rattle through and sort of sum up what that means for Elland Road and us going forwards. He said there will probably be a couple of phases that ultimately take us to 53,000. That is 16 or 17,000 more than are currently able to get into Elland Road. I think we're about 37,000. It might be a little bit more, it might be a little bit less. The first phase will likely be to 47,000, then up to 53,000. This is interesting because it sort of formalizes the fact that we're doing it in multiple stages, and that keeps things very interesting, in my opinion. Like, we've got a better idea of what that direction is looking like. But he said all the right things in this little bit of discussion as well, because he did mention he wants to keep the cauldron and electricity of the stadium as it is today. He noted that it's like this whirlwind, this hurricane of noise and passion when you're at Elland Road and it is absolutely bouncing, which he's been there in that situation many a time. I think the most recent time we'll have been there was probably the Sunderland match, which is the ultimate example of all of that. And he said that the club really do not want to lose the fact that it's a difficult place for other sides to come. I still remember in the promotion season, or the season after we went up, the one with Bielsa where we ended up 9th, we didn't lose a single match to a top 6 side when we were playing at home, which is a ridiculously good record, and it shows just how good Elland Road was to us. He also noted, though, that it is really important to get more supporters into the stadium because matchday revenue is a big part of earning money as a football club, alongside TV revenue, merch, all that kind of stuff. But the higher you can get your matchday revenues, the better you are looking for the long term. In terms of progress on it so far, he said that we've done a lot of the pre-development work in picking architects, working with the local council, and to me, that means that basically the plans are very much in place. And he ended by saying there are some announcements to come. And I think those announcements are going to be coming on promotion, whether that is strictly at the end of the season, whether that's when we're mathematically up. But I think we get news very, very quickly after we are promoted because we got to get moving on it. It's not a case of, that was a fun hiccup. It's not a case of we get promoted, well, we'll wait until the summer and then we'll do it, because the 49ers have more money than Radrizzani did. The issue with Radrizzani's tenure was he didn't have the cash to do it on his own, so he needed to make sure that the club was self-sustaining so he could do it that way. Doesn't work out. Whereas at the moment, we've got the 49ers, who are fairly chunky investors. I feel like we get that news as soon as. To me, the two phases implies that we do the West Stand first, because that is the oldest, the one that is most in need of a rework. Then the South Stand, because that is, I believe, the second oldest, or something along those lines. And there's been specific conversation about potentially building over the road as well, which can only realistically be the South Stand in that case. Maybe the North could do with an expansion, I'm not sure. But it's 2 stands worth of growth as far as I can tell. Some have been mad at the lack of recent announcements, but to me, it kind of makes sense. It feels like there's no point discussing it until we can definitely get it done, and we can only definitely get it done once we are promoted. So I don't mind it being a little bit quiet recently. Something that hasn't been a little bit quiet recently is the Rangers deal. The 49ers potentially looking at buying Rangers. And The Athletic did a little bit of a deep dive into this, having learned a little bit more stuff about it. So I thought I'd convey all of that whilst I'm doing a sort of boardroom, backroom bit. Apparently, there have been multiple routes agreed for the 49ers to reach 51% ownership. That is multiple different chunks of ownership that they can buy to form up that 51% they need for majority ownership. Apparently, the investors will be buying through a separate vehicle rather than just 49ers Enterprises that encases both Kavanagh, which is I think, pharmaceutical company, and the 49ers, but Kavanagh will be the larger part of that block, which means that the 49ers aren't strictly majority owners in this case, but the block that includes the 49ers are. And there are also some potentially confusing bits to do with this. For example, in Scottish football, there's a thing called Article 13 that is, unless given prior written consent, no person can be a shareholder in a Scottish club whilst they hold stakes in another club. But those rules have been actively broken before. Tony Bloom at Brighton is in conversations to own a bit of Hearts. Similar discussions, I think, around Aberdeen, maybe. I should have gotten the specifics of that one on a note, but I completely forgot to. Well done, mate. So it looks like there's going to be nothing that actually stops the purchase. But questions for Leeds fans are there any issues with owning both? The UEFA rulebook is a confusing one here, because it strictly says that if the two clubs are in the same competition, you can have an issue. So if both end up in the Europa League somehow, then it would be a case of the ownership group would need to pick one of the two to be able to actually be in that competition. But UEFA have ignored or put back these rules in the past. So, for example, the Girona Man City thing, it's a weird one. But the owners of Girona put their shares in Girona into a blind trust, which means that in theory they don't have any control over the club. So there's no conflicting interest because they don't have a say over one of the two sides. Feels flimsy, but it's something that the ownership groups would be able to do in this instance as well. There's also a very, very weird EFL transfer issue. Now, the easy way to solve this is just get promoted. But the very weird problem here is that apparently, according to the EFL, how do I explain this? If an owner owns two clubs that are within the same competition, they can't do transfers between each other, and it's not allowed. Now, you'd think EFL Championship, Scottish football, different competitions. For some reason, the EFL considers them the same, which is, the EFL having stupid rules isn't something that is new to us. But apparently that's a rule that might be squeezed out of the rule book in the next AGM. We'll find out. A lot of people are looking at this and thinking that it might lead to the 49ers selling Leeds. According to sources for The Athletic, there is no sign of a sale, and the 49ers will very much be in a position of a lot of their investors have put their time and attention into Leeds, not just 49ers Enterprises. They'll want to be invested when Leeds get into the Premier League. I don't see any sign of a sale. It would make no sense for them. It would make no sense for us. It would be a bad idea. To me, instead, this looks like the start of a multi-club model. So in terms of what this all means, in terms of combining all three of these stories together, I think it means we're getting a big rejig behind the scenes. It means that the club is evolving very, very quickly into a new stadium, into a new CEO and boardroom team, into a new model of club ownership. And all of these things combined mean that at the end of the day, I think we'll be in the best possible position upon promotion to just keep on going, to keep on pushing, get back to where we belong. But as always, that is just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed, pop a like on the video. That's always wonderful. Subscribe if you're not yet as well. That's also fantastic. And yeah, hope you enjoyed. I will see you later. And if you're still here, I'm doing the thing where you comment a word down below again. So I think the ideal word to comment for this one is, you know what? I really want us to find out a little bit of something about the stadium. Announcement. I'll go with announcement, because stadium announcement, ownership announcement, the Kinnear announcement today, announcement. Pop that in the comments. See you later.